Greetings, everybody. In case anyone wants to share experiences, comments, questions, or concerns with selling puts on TQQQ, I decided to create this video. But before you decide whether or not to continue listening and or watching, I'd like to say that I don't consider myself to be an expert or a professional at investing or options. And everything I say is based off what I think I know. With that out of the way, first of all, for anyone who may not know, TQQQ is an ETF that returns 3 times the amount, gains and or losses on a daily basis of the NASDAQ 100. Now, why would someone want to sell puts on TQQQ? One reason could be because the percent return on your investment can be higher compared to selling puts on other ETFs and stocks. However, a reason, if not the reason, why TQQQ puts pay more is because they could also possibly lead to greater losses if the ETF drops significantly. Now let's talk about how much money you'd need to get started, how much money you could make, and under what circumstances you would lose money. For the first part, regarding how much money you need, that depends on the strike price you select for the put you want to sell. For example, here we're looking at puts that expire on September 20th, 2024. And the strike price you select determines how much cash you need. So for instance, if you select 55, that means you need $5,500 for the put. In other words, you'd have to have $5,500 in your account available to invest, and you would use that money to sell the put. Now, what happens to that money after you sell the put? And how much money do you get in return? Well, the money stays in your account, but now it's tied up / being used for the put contract. And you won't be able to use or withdraw those $5,500 until you either close the contract or until it expires on September 20th. In return for you selling that put and setting that cash aside, you'd get paid a premium worth somewhere around $550. And the reason I say somewhere is because the exact amount depends on whatever the bid and ask is at the time you sell the put. Those $550 will show up in your account cash balance as soon as you sell the put, and you're able to use those $550 to buy stocks, or you can just leave the money there as cash, or you can even withdraw that money. However, if you ever decide that you'd like to close the contract early, before the September 20th expiration date, you'd have to return some of the $550 back. The exact amount that you'd have to return will depend on how long it's been since you sold the contract and how TQQQ has performed. If things have gone well, you'd be able to return less than you received, and you'd keep the difference as profit. Now let's talk about what selling a put contract and the strike price really mean, and under what circumstances you would lose money. If you sell a put for 55, that means that if TQQQ drops to $55 or less per share anytime between now and September 20th, the person who paid you for the contract has the right to put 100 shares of TQQQ on you at $55 a share. So, for example, if TQQQ drops to $50 per share, and the person who paid you for the 55 contract decides to exercise the contract, that means you would have 100 shares of TQQQ put on you that you paid $5,500 for, but the shares would only be worth $5,000, which means you would have an unrealized loss of $500. However, remember that you got paid $550 for this contract, so in actuality, you'd still be up $50. But if TQQQ drops even lower than your break-even price, then you'd be at a loss. However, once you have 100 shares of TQQQ, you can sell calls, which is where you promise to sell the shares at a certain price and you get paid for it. Alternatively, you can just hold on to the shares and hope they rise in value. Having said that, I'm not trying to make it seem like there's always a way to profit no matter what happens. If TQQQ drops too much, you probably will be at a loss and wouldn't be able to break even from selling calls until TQQQ rises closer to your break-even point. Finally, let's talk about what percent return you would get from this hypothetical transaction. Today is April 11th, 2024, and if you got paid $550 for using your $5,500 to sell a put that expires on September 20th, that's a 10% gain, assuming you don't get put, in 163 days, which would be equal to a 22.4% gain in a year. By the way that's calculated is you divide 10% by 163 days and then multiply the result by 365 days. Another thing to know is that not all contracts have the same return percentage. The percent gain you'd get depends on the strike price you choose and how far out or how close the expiration date is when you sell the put. Alright everybody, I hope this video has been useful. I'd like to conclude by emphasizing that TQQQ can drop significantly, as we saw in 2022. So the higher returns go along with the higher risk. Good luck everybody.